Hello, you are listening to the Gateway Church podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Gateway Church podcast. It's me, Liam Flint, and on this episode we'll be delving into some scripture with Matt Hosier. But before all of that, we've got a feature for you around the topic of family rhythms. So this is because obviously with the lockdown at the minute, this has meant that families are in closer proximity now more than ever. So that can either go one of two ways, and we'll be finding out how it's going with the Stamps. Here they are with me now on Skype. Now, Richard is part of the leadership team here at Gateway Church, along with his wife Vicky and two daughters, Hannah and Jemima. We're just going to have a chat about what they've been up to and find out what life's really like when you're a family in lockdown. So welcome, Stamps. This has the feel of a bit of a TV series.
Yay!
Hey!
Great to be with you.
Guys, first off, just give us a flavour. How are you guys coping with lockdown? Are you thriving or are you surviving?
I think we're mostly thriving with times of surviving. It's obviously been a bit of a challenge, but I think we've settled in quite quickly to a rhythm of life together that has enabled us to thrive. And, you know, the occasional kind of moment, but that's a normal family life, isn't it?
Exactly. Hannah, give it a mark out of 10 for how well it's going so far.
Probably around about 8-ish.
Oh.
It's not too bad.
And that's just Eddie's cooking, isn't it?
If you want to.
I was trying to set her up there, but she batted it back very honestly. So that's not a good start for me. Now, Rich, tell me, I hear you have 5 columns that you as a family, 5 pillars that you're working around at the moment. Can you just enlighten us, firstly, on what those are and also why you felt the need as a family to put those in place?
Yeah, sure. So I'll talk about a couple of them, and Vicky will talk about a few of them as well. But right from the very outset of the COVID-19 crisis, we, as soon as we started thinking, we're going to be locked indoors all day, we immediately started thinking, okay, we need to bring some structure to our time together. And we also need to be careful not to get in each other's way too much. Mm-hmm. And we also need to make sure that we're taking our emotional health quite seriously as well, because it's easy to look after your physical health. There are very tangible things you can do to look after your spiritual health. But this was an important one for us. Being locked down in the summer on paper is just about my worst nightmare. And that's probably true for the kids as well. So straight away we started thinking, okay, let's put some structure to this. So we came up as a family with these 5 pillars, and these pillars are all kind of areas of, they're like golden rules, if you like, or areas of activity that we come back to, and we all kind of know where we are, what the time is meant to be achieving for us, and how to operate at various points of the day and of the week as well. So I'll just give you 2 of those, and then I'll let Vix flesh out 3 others. So the first thing we've got, it's a nice, simple, practical one, is just, we call them lists. So we have all got lists, and we're constantly developing those lists. And those lists are a list of things that we want to make, a list of things we want to learn, a list of things we want to do, a list of things we want to read, and a list of things we want to watch. And so the purpose of that is so that you're not just kind of aimlessly floating from hour to hour, from day to day, or anything like that. So, you know, the minute someone says, oh, I'm bored, we go, right, what's on your list to read? Or what's on your list to make? Okay, well, let's pick that off today. And the point is, it's not a static list, it's a constantly reviewable list. So if you realize you're enjoying doing, I don't know, sewing, for example, then you develop your list more in that direction, or so on. So that's been really helpful. It's also so helpful in terms of how we manage screen time. So again, school holidays are notorious for hop in front of the telly in the morning and just channel surf for hours and hours. But we are very deliberate now. We have specific screen time. And because our list says, these are the 10 things that I really want to watch, or these are the 8 things we want to watch together as a family, nice and easy just to look at the list and go, hey, that's on the list. We all said we'd agree that we'd like to watch, read, do that. So that's been really helpful. So lists are a very, very important thing, and just a good go-to. The other thing that's been really important, so this is another one of our pillars, is to have a point of regularity every day. And so again, a very static thing, but we have chosen that lunch times will be the time that we always come together. So we'll have half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour, whatever, where we know whatever we're doing, we can come together, and lunch will be the time when we sit around the table, look into each other's eyes, ask each other questions, find out how we're doing, laugh, joke, just do kind of family life. And that doesn't mean we don't do that at other times of the day as well. It just means that if we can't do breakfast together because of a meeting, say, or dinner or whatever, we always do lunch together. So that's our sacred moment of regularity. And it also brings some structure to the day, knowing that we're going to coalesce at a particular point in the day as well, which I think is helpful for us too. So those are two of the pillars.
On the back of the regular points of regularity, we've also set up sort of daily rhythms and patterns throughout the day. I have an alarm that goes off so that when the school day or the working day is supposed to start, it lets us know. And it kind of helps guide us through the day. As a family, we always, when the kids were newborns, had a routine that enabled us as parents to know what the next need was for the child. So we've just kind of returned to that. Our children thrived with that going on. So we've returned to that kind of pattern so that there is a predictability for the girls. So there's a bit of stability there for them and for us. We've got 2 of us doing our day jobs from home, and the girls trying to do schoolwork during term time. So we needed to kind of set up a structure in the day to facilitate all of those happening within the 4 walls of our homes.
Yeah.
As part of the patterns of the day, we've also, the dining table is for schoolwork. I see my patients in a room away from everybody else so that it's private, kind of being really strict and mindful with those things as well. The learning is all about looking forward as well. So like learning new skills, as Rich said, as part of the list, but we're using that to kind of think into the future and, how would we want to be? What do we want to have achieved when we're free to move as we wish? And that's to help us look to the future and to not allow us to become stagnant, but to be moving forward and have momentum in the way that we live life. And so those would be spiritual disciplines maybe so personally, I'm hoping to establish some really good spiritual disciplines. And that's something that I want to bed in now while we've got this opportunity, so that when we are free to move in the future, those are rooted and established. And then each of us have got those things. So that's looking to the future. And then the last one that we're really focusing on is Sabbath.
The key word Sabbath. Rich, a lot of people right now, if they're working from home or if they're furloughed, a few of us are thinking, is this a time where I should be resting? I should be making the most of not having to see people? Or should I be putting the hard yards in and actually going really hard and getting ahead of the game for when I get back to the office or my business later on? How do you guys as a family strike a balance in your work and your rest?
God, such a big question, Liam, but I think I just want to start by saying Sabbath is, as much as anything, a condition of heart. And I say that because I mean that everything that we do in life, whether we're, in inverted commas, working hard in the office or whatever, or down at the beach, there should be an element of restfulness about that. We work from a place of rest. And as followers of Christ, we do that because Christ has bought our rest, and we have rest in him. So that would be my kind of meta level answer for that. But a bit more detailed. So we specifically do take at least one day of the week off to rest. And so I've adjusted my working week. Normally I take a Monday off, and now I take a Saturday off, and I work Monday to Friday because it works better for the different iteration of how we're doing church life at the moment. But I think to answer your question specifically, we should be doing both, but they are not exclusive. They're interconnected. So even on my Sabbath, I might do some kind of work, and that's not necessarily my employed work. But the thing about rest is different people rest in different ways. And so the scripture advises us to abstain from the kind of work that puts us back in slavery. It puts us back under the yoke of Pharaoh. And so on a Monday, ordinarily, I would not do any of my employed work, because that's just 6 days of the week I'll do that. One day I don't. However, I might go into the workshop and make something out of wood, or I might do some gardening. Now, for some people, that's actually what they're paid to do. So it's not an abstinence from any sort of work. It's doing the sorts of activities that give you rest. And so a Saturday for me would be almost what I would do ordinarily on a Monday. So I might, I have some time with God. We do a bit of exercise, and then I do something creative. And that creative chore gives me rest. And it's interesting because that's recreation. And when you break that word down, it's recreation. So I'm recreating myself for the working week. I'm recreating my relationships with my family. I'm recreating my kind of frazzled relationship with God from the hardworking week. I'm recreating my frazzled relationship with myself by having some time alone and doing some DIY or some gardening. So that might be a bit of a convoluted answer, but it's a really important one to get right, I think, and get straight both in terms of practice and attitude.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. I mean, you said yourself it's a massive, weighty question, and it does look different for all of us. I
would strongly advocate against seeing rest as just the Netflix binge. And I know for some people that can be restful. So I know, Liam, you and I have often talked about this. You enjoy a good Netflix binge, and that's fine if it's done with the right attitude and the right heart, and it genuinely does rest and recreate you. I think we've also just got to be careful that we don't see rest as lying on a couch. It is whatever it works for you and rests you, basically.
I think it's about intentionally selecting or choosing to do activities that when you've finished doing them, you go, I'm glad I did that, rather than, I had to do that.
Yeah.
That's, for me, helps me to kind of work out the defining line between sort of work for work and, a recreating activity.
Very helpful, very practical as well. I'm sure everyone's now thinking, analysing their routines. Right, this is where the truth comes out. Right, Jemima, tell me, what new skills, I'm sure there have been lots of new fun things you've taken up that otherwise in normal life you may not have been doing. What are some of those things you've been up to?
Me and my dad have been up in the workshop a bit more, doing and making stuff together. I've been cooking a lot more often and I'm getting better at that. I wouldn't necessarily do that at school or in normal home life because it's a bit chaotic. I'm getting more time to go outside in the garden and see what I can do with what I have and make it fun.
Brilliant.
I've also had real fun connecting more with Hannah, as usually we would just slump on a couch and maybe watch a movie or just start fighting. It's kind of what us sisters do, but we're connecting a bit more and it feels really good.
That's brilliant. Just picking up on what you said about the food and the cooking, if you were to help make one meal, what would your favourite meal be to make for mum and dad?
Probably pasta.
Okay, good.
Make
Safe.
pasta.
Good.
From
Safe
scratch,
option.
And tell Liam what you've been doing outside around the fire.
I've been cooking meat with my dad.
Ooh, the South African way.
Yeah.
And I let Jemima take over the kitchen yesterday, so she baked some cakes all on her own.
Sounds like a really good time to be on lockdown right now.
I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. Cake.
Education happening all over the place.
Yeah.
And Hannah, what about for you? What's been the best thing about being on lockdown with everyone, and also the worst thing about being stuck with your family in the house?
Wow, I've really liked getting closer to everyone. So normally, like Jemima said, I would just come and sit down on the sofa. But we've found more time to spend more time together and doing board games or making dinner all together. But then also with that, you can get too much of each other. And so that's when we start to just irritate each other and
Need a bit of space. Yeah, that's natural.
Yeah.
Also, just so that we don't come across like the Waltons, the reality is
Too late.
we do fall out and we do miss the routine, and there've been, extended lines where there shouldn't have been and stuff like that. But it's fine because there's got to be a bit of movement and flex in the routine such that you can come back to it with a bit of vigor if you need to. That's the kind of purpose. As Vicky said, it serves us, not the other way around.
For other families who are crying out for some more routine or just some tips for how they can connect well, has there been anything in particular, maybe one or two things that have worked well for you guys and you would recommend other families to try?
Yes, two things I want to say. Number one, challenge what you think is restful, because I think we have just exited a way of living which would tell you that social media and TV is what rests you. That may be true for you. I'm not saying it isn't, but I think I would challenge that and really spend this time trying to work out what replenishes your soul and what energizes you, number one. And straight out of that, I think the lists are so crucial, because there've been times when I've not kind of vast periods of time, but there've been times when I've felt a little bit aimless, or I've come to the end of a working day and thought, oh, what's my purpose now? To have those lists and remind myself, I said I wanted to learn a particular skill, so I'm going to use this time now to learn that skill. Or I said I was going to read that book that I've always wanted to read. Now's a good time to do it, I think is crucial. So yeah, challenge what you think gives you rest and develop some proper ideas of what's going to restore you and set you up well for the future.
Okay, I'm joined by Matthew Hosier, who heads up the leadership team here at Gateway Church. Matt, how are you doing today?
Yeah, doing pretty well, thank you. Enjoying the weather. Looking forward to Easter weekend. Wishing I could get to the beach, but being good about keeping to the regulations.
Well done. And are you surviving, being the only man of the house in lockdown?
Well, has its moments.
This is your chance, Matt, for an SOS call.
I've had many years of practice.
Brilliant. Right, so we're going to have a chat about CBR. So why don't we start with 2 Kings, shall we? And then we'll move on to the New Testament. Now, Matt, you wanted to pick up on this theme of righteousness, and in particular, to start with, that it's not actually a guarantee of blessing. Do you want to explain a little bit more about that?
Well, we have Hezekiah, who appears in chapter 18 of 2 Kings, and compared to most of the kings we get in 2 Kings, he's a really good king. Actually says there's no one like him amongst all the kings of Judah, either before him or after him. So he stands out as an exceptional character, an exceptionally godly character. But that doesn't mean that everything he does is blessed, or not in the way that we often interpret it. And I think there's lots of so-called theology out there which says that as Christians, we should expect to be blessed in everything all the time. And that just doesn't line up with what we see in Scripture, certainly doesn't line up with what we see here. So Hezekiah, this unbelievably godly man, is threatened by the king of Assyria, and the Assyrians were just horrific as a people, such a cruel people. And God doesn't give Hezekiah everything he might want. It says that Hezekiah strips the temple of its gold to pay off the king of Assyria, make him go away rather than attacking Jerusalem. So it's, for me, a helpful reminder again that even if we're living godly lives, that doesn't mean that we're always going to be exempt from tough times. And that's very relevant at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Trials certainly do come, and it's not a perfect, easy kind of life. Like you said, I think some people look at the perfect Christian and think that you have to have it all together, but even looking through the Bible, it's littered with good people who seem to go through the mill a little bit. So, yeah, we absolutely see that. And also the importance of prayer in that same passage as well. Just a bit further down, Hezekiah then has to get before God and basically pleads with God to intervene, and we see an amazing miracle.
Yeah, we do. So this is a really important story. It's told here in 2 Kings. It's also told in the book of the prophet Isaiah, because Isaiah comes into the story here that once again the king of Assyria is threatening Jerusalem. We have to remember what a powerful empire the Assyrians were at this time. They were completely dominant in the region. And certainly in military terms, it's a bit like the United States attacking, I don't know, Ireland or something of that kind of...
They'll be in trouble anyway, yeah.
Order of magnitude of military difference. And they come to attack Jerusalem. And the prophet Isaiah suddenly pops up in the narrative, and God speaks through Isaiah and promises deliverance. And what's interesting is the way that Hezekiah responds to that he gets hold of the prophecy in prayer, really lays hold of it and comes before God and asks that God would do what the prophecy has said. Hezekiah prays, Lord, deliver us from the hand of the king of Assyria, so that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone, Lord, are God. And God does this amazing miracle that we get to the end of the story, and God does deliver them. The Assyrians suddenly get struck down, and says that they withdraw and kind of run away. And it is a bit of an inexplicable moment in history, because the Assyrians had conquered everywhere and Jerusalem alone is kind of spared. It is this amazing miracle that comes in the response to prayer. So again, for us at this time, we can pray for big things. We can pray for the deliverance of the Lord, and God is able to do amazing miracles.
Yeah, and I think what I take from that is that God's response is big as well. I mean, these may be feeble prayers, but 185,000 Assyrians struck down. So actually God will answer our prayers, and in a big way as well. In chapter 19, there's a key verse in there that, especially for us as Gateway Church, is something that we hold very dear and take seriously. Do you want to just explain what that is?
Yeah, so in verse 29 of chapter 19, Isaiah is prophesying, and he has this prophecy about real fruitfulness for Hezekiah and his people. which is different from what they might expect in the circumstances. And then in the next verse 30, Isaiah says, the remnant of the kingdom of Judah will take roots below and bear fruit above. And that's a verse which the Lord really brought to our attention 6 or 7 years ago, and something we often lean into and pray into, that for us we would be a people who have strong roots and are fruitful. And at this time, when we're not meeting together, we're not gathering together in worship, we can feel like a remnant, a small number of people kind of scattered out in the world. This is a great one to lay hold of again and pray into. Lord, let our roots be strong and let us be fruitful. That's what you've called us to.
Okay, so we'll put 2 Kings down there. Let's move into 1 Corinthians, our New Testament passage. Timing's great. This is very fitting. There's an Easter link in chapter 2, Matt.
Yeah, there certainly is, because where Paul begins this letter, chapters 1 and chapter 2, is about him boasting in the cross of Christ. And this absolutely key verse where he says that I resolved, verse 2 of chapter 2, I resolved to know nothing while I was with you except Christ and him crucified. And of course, this Easter week, Good Friday tomorrow, Easter Sunday coming up, that's really what we're focusing on. And this isn't just for Easter, this is for the whole of life. Resolved to know nothing except Jesus Christ and him crucified.
And I like this one in chapter 3. Really does show how we should select our leaders, and it's definitely not on personality. So the question then is, Matt, what should people be measured by and chosen by, if not by their personality?
The Corinthians seem to be splitting into little factions, and they have their kind of preacher top of the pops, people they like, that some of them really like Paul, others aren't too keen on Paul, they prefer Apollos, some aren't so keen on Apollos, they prefer Peter. And I can imagine the reason that was happening was because as you read the Bible, read the New Testament, from what we know about Paul and Apollos and Peter, they were very different in personality. I think Peter was probably the kind of guy who lit up a room. He was an extrovert. He was larger than life. I should imagine he was fun to have around. Apollos comes across as a very studious guy. So I should imagine the people who wanted really good, solid Bible teaching, they were all saying, give us Apollos. And Paul, obviously powerful, an apostle, but from what we know about him, not physically impressive. He says at the beginning of chapter 2 that he came to Corinth in fear and trembling. The city was intimidating to him. So probably people in the church thinking, actually, Paul's not as good a speaker as Apollos, and he's not as much fun as Peter. And it's easy in church life to kind of pick your leaders on those very shallow things, really, trivial things. And the point that Paul makes here is, look, all of us have a role. God's called me and Apollos and Peter. We're all serving in different ways. But the key thing is that God causes fruit to come out of his church. So kind of wise up, think about these things with more maturity. Look at what's really being built here. Don't just assess things by personality preferences about how different people come across as leaders. Look at what's God building and measure things by that.
And then finally, just to wrap up in chapter 4, I mean, a lot of this letter that Paul writes is to challenge the arrogance of the Church of Corinth, that they've got things wrong. But especially here, it's a real reminder, isn't it, for us to be humble. And just verse 7 stands out to me. What do you have that you did not receive? And Matt, you really like Paul's use of irony in this chapter, don't you?
Yes, he does seem to use irony, and we need to be alert to the way that the Bible often at times uses irony, uses comedy. I mean, you could really say that Paul is kind of stepping a bit beyond irony into outright sarcasm here. In verse 8, he says, already you have all that you want. Already you've become rich. You've begun to reign. And I think he's really pointing out to them, look, you think you've got it all together, but actually your theology is confused. You're arrogant rather than humble. And that's being displayed in the fact that you're still living in a worldly kind of way. You're thinking in worldly terms, and you're acting in a worldly way. You're acting more like Corinth than the people of God. So actually, you need to listen and you need to change. And it's a bit of a slap in the face for them, really. And again, that can be helpful for us because we can slip into that kind of thing as well. We can slip into arrogance. We can slip into thinking we've got it all together. And again, this time has been a real wake-up call to us. You're not as much in charge. You haven't got life as sorted as you think you had.
No.
And it's a time when we're needing to come with humility before God and desperately asking for his help and his guidance and his wisdom, because we've quickly found that we are at the end of our resources, the end of our wisdom, the end of our knowledge. God, please help us. So I think there's lots here to apply to our context at the moment.
Yeah, so much there to take away. We hope this has been helpful for everyone as we just dip into CBR. Enjoy the rest of the week, and we'll be back with you soon. Bye for now.